Tuia ki te Māori o te whenua. Tuia ki te mana o te tangata. Tuia ki te maua. Kia piki, kia eki, kia rata. Tuia, tai. Thank you very much and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Taupō District Council meeting. Here we are in September already. Thank you very much for coming. Just to remind everybody to speak nice and clearly into the speakers because we have we're recording, correct? Recording to be upplayed later. Apologies this afternoon, Councillor Kylie Leonard. Councillor John Williamson's online. Good to see you, John. And Councillor Truman. Kirsty Truman. Could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Shepherd, seconded by Councillor Fletcher. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Carried. There's no change around in any of the items today, so that's all good. Any conflicts of interest pertaining to the items today?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councillor Campbell.
Regarding item 5.2, I just feel the need, because I will be touching on matters transportation, to express I do not have a conflict of interest, and I feel the need to say that because there have been messages in the media and she by herself, Your Worship, which may give that impression.
Councillor Lachlan.
I'm interested in item 5.4 as a trustee of the Taupō Māori.
Councillor Lachlan. Okay, thank you. We'll note those conflicts of interest. Thank you very much. All right, item 4.1, confirmation of the minutes. They're held on the 29th of July. Any matters arising from those minutes or points of clarification? Could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Lachlan. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Confirmation of the minutes, 27th of August. Any matters arising? No, could I have a mover, please, for those minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Greenslade, seconded by Councillor Park. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Yes, carried. Item 5.1, notice of motion. Can I ask Councillor Campbell to speak to move this notice of motion, please?
They're here or yeah? Five minutes. Yep. Take the item as read, but the workshop was 5.1. Use this opportunity to briefly allude to many of the words rules, exceptions, and intentions. This notice of motion was declined last month on the basis it was submitted some hours late due to a misinterpretation by myself of 5 working days. Now that was a rule being applied, and it would have been an exception by the chairperson to include this paper last month. The point of this notice of motion is to introduce a rule whereby council workshops and other formal meetings involving elected members always be audio-visual recorded, and with exceptions to be documented. With regard to the intention of the October 2023 Ombudsman Review of Council Meetings and Workshop Practices, I read that there was a pretty clear inference for audio-visual recordings of council meetings and workshops to happen where possible. Since then, and nearly 12 months later, audio-visual recording has happened for 0 workshops that I can find, and only a handful of meetings apart from these full monthly council meetings. Quoting the Ombudsman from his own report to this council, it is my expectation and a requirement of the LGA 2002 that a local authority should conduct its business in an open, transparent, and democratically accountable manner. There is an expectation that full and accurate records of workshops are kept, and this is also a requirement of the Public Records Act. For the half dozen workshops in August, there are no records available on the council website that I can see. Perhaps they haven't been downloaded yet, but they're not there. That's written records, and only sporadically for others before this date. So it seems to me that we may be in breach of the Public Records Act already. There was an instance where I specifically requested a workshop to be audio-visual recorded. My request was directly refused by you, Your Worship. This was the Tangata Whenua Partnerships in the Taupō District Forms Relationships for Future Opportunities on 8th of August. And my request was on the basis that I felt it was of enough public interest, and I had every reason to believe that the answer I presented was not entirely objective. So I would say that one of the Ombudsman's expectations of this council to consider live streaming and audio-visually record workshops, that's his words, was very much on the optimistic side, even bearing in mind our technical challenges, which is probably why the recommendation was so watery. To highlight the importance of audio-visual recordings, nearly all of our meetings and workshops occur during weekday working hours, and it seems we expect only retired or unemployed or highly motivated working people taking time off work to be able to attend in person. An administrator's written record, when it happens, is hardly an adequate substitute, and especially when visual slides are included. With regard to committee meetings and the like, it also needs to be recognised that there is not always universal agreement on many matters, and it is simply not good enough to just put out that elected members decided on this or that by majority decision, in my opinion. People voted us in, so they deserve to see what we get up to and what we stand for. As an aside, and this is my opinion, I maintain that the term workshop can be something of a misnomer, because it implies that all attendees are actively contributing towards a solution. That sometimes happens. But when, in my view, these workshops can really just be a form of staff presentation with limited opportunity for feedback, which sometimes resurfaces a staff paper for elected members to decide something, and with some sort of presumption that it has somehow all been workshopped. There was also one instance where we paid quite handsomely for a consultant to come and present for an hour or two on the topic of car parking in the CBD. The public pay for these workshops. Closing off, we have some technology challenges because of our temporary premises. 5 years or so, however long we've been in these premises can be called temporary. But these council chambers do have a workable system right now that can be used every time a workshop meeting is held here. I did ask, Julie, for information about, because there was a question, I believe, I did request this information before, the amount of hours staff effort required to record a workshop. That was held as a reason why. So I'll ask that question of it. I'll carry on, but if you can answer it there as I finish. So to finish off and bring things back to where I started, intentions are clearly not enough to always rely on. So I propose, as per this notice of motion, to introduce a rule whereby every council workshop and formal meetings involving elected members are to be audio-video recorded, unless by exception the mayor and with documented reasons. My expectation is that almost every such meeting in council chambers will be. And I've put my notice of motion, I'm asking for a seconder. There's the scope to amend the wording of it if you understand my intention. I'm open to that anyway. So I suppose that I ask for a seconder. Is that correct?
Thank you. Okay, just before that, any points of clarification to Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Councillor Campbell. Councillor Greenslade.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Councillor. Have you had this discussion about your motion with any of the staff? And what was the response?
No, the only staff member I asked requested information from was Julie, the CEO, about how many hours staff effort does it require to actually record each one of these instances. If you are able to, that may have the answer to that question may affect some of the elected members' responses. So do we have an answer to that question, Julie?
I'm going to speak at whatever time, but I think.
No, my question was actually to the councillor. Julie, I don't expect you to respond. Thank you.
Councillor Westerman.
I suppose I'm really just querying, because I'm sure you know the answer to this, Councillor Campbell, is we are moving within a matter of months into our new building where the technology will be available readily. So I don't know why you're making this such a complicated process when in a couple of months it's going to be happening as of right. So I don't think we need a rule. So I would just query that.
Councillor Park?
I could answer that.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, a bit. Yeah, through the chair. I mean, it's more than just a few months. It's June, July, I think. Where
It's January.
Anyway, I don't need an answer.
well,
It's not a concept.
Okay.
I mean, it's well, if this rule can apply in the new premises too, but I mean, if it could have happened, if it can happen then, it can happen now. I mean,
So Park?
Thank you, Worship. My definition of what a workshop is to that elected member is completely different. Mine is that a workshop is about a presentation of information to help you make full decisions. No decisions should be made in a non-transparent way, and that's why we have full council meetings that are recorded. I agree with Councillor Westerman that to change technology in a building that we only have a lease until later this year is a ridiculous cost to ratepayers. Considering that elected member keeps going on about it, then I'm not happy about that. And also, you posted on Facebook that you thought the Ombudsman was having an off day when he gave a glowing report of Taupō District Council and how transparent and great they were. So I don't believe what you're saying, so I won't be seconding your motion.
Councillor Taylor?
Question, have you costed out how much it would cost and what the opportunity cost of the staff members involved who would then be diverted from their current duties to being involved in recording this? And can you give us an indication of what that cost would be, given that this is your notice of motion?
no, well, Councillor Taylor, that's exactly what I cannot answer, because that is the information I was exactly asking from our CEO to be provided before this meeting, because I recognise that may be a factor in people the decision.
Councillor Rankin?
I don't know if you can answer this, Councillor Campbell, but how many people actually watch the recorded meetings that we currently have? Do we have any numbers on it? You know,
Oh, I'm offhand, sorry.
because it's a heck of a cost if it's 5 people or something.
It's more than, no, it's in the,
Currently one, currently.
That's staff.
Oh, that's the start.
yeah, they can't live now, so
When yes, they can watch this live.
Councillor Fletcher?
Actually, that was my question, based around how many people on average have watched the live stream of the
For construction work.
last 6 months. I could probably give a rough estimate.
We're
That's
part of
just
an
around
industry, looks
100
like
views, but that's not including how many people watch the lives of the stream all the way through, which I think would be significantly lower. So I don't see the purpose in us then having to record.
Yeah, I was gonna
also,
say.
record also workshops, because there are a lot of workshops also held off-site as well. Logistically, what does that look like? So we have to set up cameras. in order to
Or
record those workshops.
yeah,
Do we
or
have
the property.
a review of what that
The
costs?
property.
I don't see what
Up
the
there.
which is the reason behind why we're seeking this.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Okay, any other questions? Councillor
yeah, I'll just I'm my expectation is not additional cost of hardware. Practically speaking, my expectation is that certainly in instances happening in these chambers, has the equipment set up, that would be, there would be no reason not to be doing this. But again, I wait for our CEO's answer about the cost involved in just staff time, or because that seems to be the only effort required as far as I can tell.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. So your motion is still there on the agenda. Would you like to move that?
Oh, was the chair, could we get an answer from CEO before?
I don't.
Well,
Yeah, what was the actual question again about the cost?
So,
the staff time and effort required to record such a workshop,
so
1 hour workshop, yeah.
So
Are
perhaps
you
if I'm
happy
happy
to
to
answer
answer some questions and perhaps they're helpful. So firstly, from my perspective, we are not long for this building. We are probably exiting here before we move into the new building. And so therefore investment in IT and investment in the way we're working in this facility is not worth the money all the time, because we're not long for here. And we certainly want to be able to live stream our meetings when we move into the new building. And that's been the intention that we've advised to the Ombudsman. My take in terms of staff time is it's not so much the actual time for doing this, but it's the trade-off in terms of the time that they would be doing. We're very lucky in terms of our comms team to have some awesome specialist skills, and acknowledging some of the team that are in the room today. My take is that they spend their time providing videos and digital content that's actually explaining to our community what we're doing and why, and we get great feedback on the videos and the work that we do. When we look at the time that would be spent doing council meetings, on average since June this year, we've had 88 views in our council meetings. Across those, some of those have been higher than others, and they've been mostly the LTP meetings. Some of our meetings have been down to about 22 views when they've been uploaded on YouTube. I'd also just like to clarify the comment around workshops. I've just been advised that in the recording since June last year, 32 of those that have been uploaded on YouTube have been workshops. So where there has been public interest and meetings, where there has been public interest, we have made an exception and videoed those and placed these on YouTube. The way we're working currently is that each month we get a list of upcoming meetings and workshops, and when we believe that there's particular public interest, we make those recorded and put up on YouTube, and by default all council meetings are also recorded up and placed on YouTube. I personally believe that that's meeting the demands at the moment from our community, and of course all our workshops are open and they're advertised on the website unless they're closed for reasons under Lagoima.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Powell.
Yes, sorry, just through the chair, and to reiterate, all meetings are published in newspapers and on the website and are mostly open except for reasons under Lagoima for any member of the public to attend.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor, oh, sorry, someone else? John. Oh, Councillor Williamson, sorry.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to reiterate, I think with the Duncan's last paragraph, quoting, given the transparency of decision making, all the workshops and meetings are all be available online. It doesn't have no impact on whether about the transparency of decision making is always transparent, whatever way you look at it. So I just agree with the comments regarding, I think Councillor Western started off a few months ago, and following up Julie's comments, the time factor, that I would support waiting. I agree, I support them going on being recorded eventually, but I think it can wait till move to the new building. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, back to Councillor Campbell, your motion.
Can
you read out your motion, then I'll ask for a seconder.
I'll reiterate just briefly that I'm not expecting additional investment in equipment. It was merely to make better use of what we do have, certainly in these council chambers, and none of the workshops have been video recorded that I could find this fast since the Ombudsman review on that. Anyway, I'll move it. Do I have a seconder? Right.
It's been moved by Councillor Campbell. Do we have a seconder, please? No, the motion is lost. Thank you. 5.2, Mr. Campbell again. Councillor Campbell, another notice of motion. 5 minutes to talk to it.
Take the motion as read. Main point of this notice of motion is to draw staff and elected members' attention to this recent Court of Appeal finding, which highlights some things in the Local Government Act, which have been existing for some time, but in my opinion is really enough enacted in its fullest sense of the meaning. And I'm talking about sections 76 to 78, in particular 77 part 1, which requires local authorities to, during the decision-making process, seek to identify all reasonably practicable options to achieve the objective of a decision and assess the options in terms of their advantages and disadvantages. In the Thornton case, which relates to some angle parking spaces being removed, this is Wellington, although the decision was revoked in the Court of Appeal, the angle parking spaces are not going to be reinstated because of subsequent street works. However, the main point for us to consider is that even if a correct decision, or deemed correct decision is arrived at, the manner of that decision making can be challenged. In this case, the Court of Appeal deemed that elected members who made the decision were not presented with all practicable options to make a properly informed decision. I haven't looked at the Thornton case very closely, but believe the original council decision to remove the angle parking spaces was probably made on the most conservative basis in favour of cyclist safety. Now, to those who think elected members at Taupō District Council are always presented with all the practicable options, I disagree. A few examples I can think of my brief time here so far. The decision to proceed with the Mototiri Reserve Management Plan review presented to us in February 23 is something which was previously committed to by council, with the option to not proceed decidedly missing from the menu, and which I personally subsequently realised would have been an eminently practicable option. It is true that some sort of form of previous commitments were made, but these seem to have been quite substantially motivated by an intention to vest the management of the reserve to local hapu, and this reserve management review is the required mechanism to achieve that. Elected members certainly could have chosen not to undertake this review, and although the consequences would have included...
Interrupting. This has nothing to do with the substance of the notice of motion. This is grandstanding on an issue.
I agree.
Steering group that's already impaneled to deal with. I request that the members step to his notice of motion.
I would suggest he's also breached being open-minded and should be excluded from Mototiri decision.
Through the chairs, absolutely, this is regarding about being provided with all practicable options. I was merely going to say, wrap up that the consequences, if we had chosen not to undertake, would have included some disappointed stakeholders, notably local hapu, against that the quite substantial cost. All right, I'll move on to the next one if you like.
Subject notice of motion.
Relating to my profession as a traffic engineer, like transportation decisions, and I confidently can say we're not always presented with all practical options.
Okay, we've got that point. What's next?
Well, I would, okay, Turangi wastewater land disposal scheme. This is absolutely to do with being provided with practicable options, and these are my examples. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know.
You want to move the motion, Councillor?
Just some of the few examples I'm aware of. Of course,
5 minutes is up.
none of us elected members are experts. Excuse me, Your Worship. I mean, I've had so many interruptions. That's
Councillor, can I speak to your motion, please?
well. What kind of?
Yeah, I'll ask a question. We'll go into questions. 5 minutes is up. We've read the motion. You've said taken it as read.
Some interruptions.
Yeah.
Your Worship, please. I haven't wrapped up.
Sorry, I'll have the member be quiet now, please. Thank you. You've delivered your notice of motion. Councillor Greenslade, any questions or clarification on this
I
notice?
would like to make the comment that I have investigated the Thornton Key Court of Appeal case. The issue there was that there was only one submitter, and that submitter was a manager. I do note that on our waste minimisation plan that we're about to talk about this morning, we've had 49 submissions. So that was based on the fact that it was one submitter and it was a manager. So I think it's very important that you look at how that Court of Appeal decision was arrived at, and I certainly don't believe it applies to us.
Councillor Lachlan?
Just a quick question. So I'm just looking at this notice of motion and I'm looking for the full range of reasonably practicable options in terms of this paper, like not doing this new rule and everything else, and I don't see them there. So I'm kind of like, I agreed with some of the court at all. I would not be supporting this paper.
Councillor Taylor?
Councillor Greenslade, I've also read the appeal decision, which I'm assuming you must have done so, given this is your notice of motion, and would have a reasonable working knowledge of it, given that you have quoted the court reference. In relation to section 77(1), is it your contention that we fail on substance or process in relation to our agenda items?
Through the chair, giving my examples, which was, I was giving examples of failure in the process, which is the entire point of this motion, is that the point of that case is the important takeaway of this should be that any decision made by this council is potentially subject to judicial review and these decisions can be overturned if found to be made with insufficient information being provided, even if the decisions arrived at may be considered sound at a later point. Of course, judicial reviews do not happen every day of the week, and it takes some highly motivated individuals, as happened there, obviously, because someone had hired a bunch of lawyers to take it through to the extreme. Trivial matters deserve less scrutiny for sure. However, I say that greater discernment is now required by both staff and elected members alike. And to reiterate that in the Thornton Key case, it was not that the decision was necessarily found to be wrong, but that council staff had appropriated a more substantive role as decision makers than they should have. I believe that also happens around here sometimes, and this Court of Appeal finding needs to be acknowledged.
Colour, you a lot question.
So I thought I'd asked a fairly simple question, clearly that didn't register with you. It was around substance or process. Can you point to the case or the result of the case that highlights anything you've just said? Because I can tell I've got it open in front of me, and nothing you've just said appears anywhere in the text of the decision by the Court of Appeal judges. So I'm wondering where you're getting your monologue from.
Through the chair, I mean, I have run this past a lawyer contact of mine. These words are my own. The substance of this judicial Court of Appealing review is that Wellington Council did not follow correct process. Staff did not present them with all practicable options. And the elected members made a decision based on insufficient information. That's it, really.
So that's fine. Just in relation to this, given that this is I'll help you with the answer. It's a process decision that the Court of Appeal made, and that's where they found the failings were. Mm-hmm. And given that process sits with the democracy team and our legal advisors, have you run this past any of the team sitting in front of us now prior to you tabling your notice of motion?
No.
Are you aware that the democracy team and our legal advisors are well attuned with this decision, have read it and apply it consistently anyway?
I don't believe it has been applied consistently in this council.
I'm asking, are you aware that they are well aware of this decision, regardless of your notice of motion?
No, I was not aware.
Thank you.
Councillor Park.
Yes, through the chair, I can only go on the notice of motion in front of us, which is to do with a Wellington transportation issue. I do think that the elected member has a conflict of interest, given that he's already mentioned in this notice of motion chat about him being a professional traffic engineer. And also I am not keen at all for Taupō District to base any infrastructure decisions based on Wellington City Council.
Okay.
I'd like to respond to that. I mean, certainly, Councillor Park, if you can indicate where my conflict of interest might be. And secondly, if you read the notice of motion, which is actually quite simple, it's actually hard. It's actually quite hard to argue against, to be honest. That council officers take note of the Thornton Key Court of Appeal finding dated 15 July 2024 and undertake to always provide the full range of reasonably practicable options in any staff paper presented to elected members requiring a decision. I mean,
just before you move that,
I'll move it.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just following up Councillor Taylor's comments about it's a little bit bizarre if he was Councillor Campbell not aware of the CEO of the Thornton case. So how significant was that case, Duncan? How significant was it?
Well, it's significant to me, and I think it's significant.
No, significant
to my district council.
No, I'm talking about significant to the Wellington Council. How significant was the judgment?
Oh, I can't speak for them.
Medium, yeah, still significant, medium. The other thing was also, do you believe or trust? Do you believe in your CEO and the manager, or do you believe in your elected members that were being transparent and being being honest about things, or not?
Sorry, honest. I don't sense any dishonesty, if that's what you're asking.
Mr. Taylor.
I don't want to prolong the agony, but just one more. You've cited some examples where you believe and respectfully.
Well, I've tried to cite some examples, yeah.
And respectfully, I disagree with you in terms of those examples you've cited. You will be aware in the minutes of the meeting that we're holding right now, in the agenda are minutes of last month's meeting, which I wasn't here. You raised another notice of motion in relation to some traffic matters in town. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How many options did you present in compliance with section 77(1) of the Local Government Act in relation to that notice of motion?
Through the chair, that was not a staff paper.
And the disadvantages and advantages of same in compliance with section 77(1) of the Local Government Act.
Oh, I agree. That paper last month would have been entirely deficient.
So
on that basis,
respectfully, your notice of motion is really a mirror held up to yourself in terms of the matters you bring before council. Yeah.
Nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
Councillor Rankin. And
The notice of motion is actually null and void because it already happens. So why are you moving something that is common everyday practice at this council?
I disagree. Absolutely. I have some examples. I have some which I.
Hey, we've had enough. I think we've had enough delivery of the conversation here. I think we've had enough. Councillors have plenty of questions for clarification. You've moved in motion. I'll now I'll now ask for a seconder. No seconder. Motion is lost. Thank you.
Fine.
Item 5.3, adoption of the waste management and minimisation plan. Brent and Tanya.
So through the chair, before we move on to that, can I just ask, I'm not sure if this is legal or where it sits. We seem to be getting into the situation of notice of the motion at every single formal council meeting. And obviously, I mean, as Councillor Rankin just pointed out, this one was actually null and void to begin with because the decisions made, the precedence is there. So just wondering, for the sake of all these amazing people in the room who have jobs to do, how we can get on to actual proper business of council without wasting ratepayers' money, because it's becoming more and more of a habit. And while everyone has the right to freedom of speech and to put any request on the table, I just find that we're getting really sidetracked in the real business of Taupō District.
Noted, and we, CEO, I think we're going to have a conversation about standing orders and regarding that situation.
To the chair, I'll just make a comment.
No, I'll carry on now, please.
Okay.
You've had your time, Councillor Campbell. Right, Mr. Brent Aiken, where is Tanya?
Oh,
Come on, Tanya. Hello, Tanya. Sorry, you're one of the authors. So. Right. Good afternoon, team.
Good afternoon, your worship and councillors. 6 yearly, we have to put a WMP document on the table. It's law by the government. Unfortunately, we're having to reduce at this stage our target of diversion from 60 to 50. A couple of things have been in that space. Obviously, we didn't make it across the line in regards to our food diversion opportunity at the curbside, and as you would know, that we've had some issues with concrete contamination with asbestos. So thinking about those things going forward, we've had to reduce our target. Obviously, there will be some new opportunities that we'll be working on. And so when we think about what we're looking to try and do, we're in the reuse and repair space. We've already had a couple of workshops and we want to facilitate that to be a bigger thing. And thank you to Councillor Shepherd for their support in that space. We're in the food rescue space as well, and you would have seen a food print app just get launched recently. So food is getting a bit older, it's gone into the waste bin, it's actually offered to the market at a cheaper rate, and obviously we want to do some more work in that space as well. We're looking to talk to Food Bank as well, support a relationship in that space. The construction and demolition space, I think when we've completed the negotiations with Enviri NZ on our contract, and then some of the options around jib board, window glass and wood. might come to fruition. So we'll come back and talk to you about that once we've got those across the line. Obviously, the other one in that space for the WMP is the landfill, and we've just started to book in some hui around those developments about what's going to happen in that landfill space. So really, the floor's open to any questions. Hopefully we can adopt this and make some strides in diverting more waste for our district.
Thank you, Brent. Any questions of Brent? Councillor Greenslade.
Really interesting reading this, Brent, and I know that you were disappointed with perhaps the outcome of what happened with the survey across the district, and we did change what we were going to do. But what was really good about that was the fact that council did listen to residents and ratepayers, and council did act. And I wasn't perhaps what you wanted it to be, but it was a case of council really listening to the local people, which I commend you on. I just want to ask a bit of a sideways question here. How does the closure of the paper processing factory in Penrose and Auckland affect us?
You would have seen through you, Mr. Chair, the Penrose plant just closed. I think most of that material has now been exported overseas. Yeah. I think what you've seen is the market has had some pretty old plant, and it's failing to compete with the overseas market prices for recovered materials. And that's shown that just isn't economic to be able to run going forward. So
is it going to affect us?
Not at this stage.
It's not okay.
It hasn't. The contractor has not indicated that that's an issue to us.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thing on page 50 of the agenda under targets 3.5.3. You've got track changes on, but you've got the waste diversion target to 51% diversion, and then you've got the low one below. I'm just wondering if both numbers are still in there. It's a pedantic point.
So it should be 50.
50.
Yeah, no, it should be 50,
Yeah,
but you
yeah.
still get the other one above.
Thank you.
Yeah. So once we've hopefully adopted it, those track changes will go into place. And appreciate that. Yeah.
Very good. Any other questions of Brent and Tanya? No.
Just comment your wish.
Yes.
I found it very interesting as well, and not too substantive changes. Well, in terms of writing, not a lot, but in terms of doing, probably quite a bit. I'm happy to move if there's no other questions you wish it.
Thank you. Been moved by Councillor Lachlan. Could I Clary?
Can I just add one more thing? We have identified in that how we pay for the under the levy payment. Currently, we're getting about $200,000 every quarter, so that's 800K. That's moving up as the waste. So this is the waste minimisation levy funds. So new developments in this waste minimisation fund can be used for new developments that we can implement. So we don't actually have to go to the ratepayer and ask them to provide more rate money. We've got a stash of money in a fund that's hypothecated, so it has to, by law, stay in the waste minimisation fund pool. So it's there available for us. So if we end up going down the route of diverting, say, X, then we have funds in that pool to be able to enable us to do that without actually increasing rates. Just thought I'd add that.
Councillor Greenslade.
Sorry, I did have a question. I've just found my note. We've moved from sort of, I suppose about 10 years ago, it being tonnes per capita as being 0.529 to being considerably higher than that in 22 to 0.716. What's the reason for that, Brent? Do you know?
Well, that's just an increase in population, an increase in business. But what you will see,
it's per capita, so it shouldn't.
That number reflects a high visitor tonnage. Yeah. But doesn't reflect the statistics of the people when they do the the count of folks, because half those people aren't here. So we get all their waste,
that stands to
but they don't get counted as the populace.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, been moved by Councillor Lachlan. I have a second, please. Thank you. Councillor Shepherd. Any other further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Thank you. 5.4, Tūwharetoa Māori Trust Board and Taupō District Council Joint Management Agreement. Gordon. Good afternoon, Gordon. And have you got anyone? David? Go to David. Nice to see you.
Mayor David, councillors, see you all too. We will take the report as read. Being that also I would say this, I hope that it does succinctly set out the key matters that will hopefully inform you enough to be able to reach the suggested recommendations that are put in front of you today. Specifically, we are required by statute, being the Waikato River Act, to re-establish the Te Whare Māori Trust Board Taupō District Council Joint Committee. Key function of that committee being to oversee the drafting and finalisation of the joint management agreement. And you would have seen in the report, given that the Te Arawa River Iwi Trust and Raukawa JMAs were also established under the River Act, that we have made a recommendation within the report for you to consider appointing your existing co-governance committee members that are sitting on those committees onto this one as well. The other key recommendation we want your insight on is obviously the approval in principle to include the additional matters under section 54 in the negotiation scope, noting however that any decisions concerning the scope, including those matters sought via section 54, will come back to council and the trust board for approval. And there is also a recommendation there around seeking your support to have the JMA completed by 30th of June 2025. Unless there are any specific questions, as I say, I'm hopeful that the report sets out all the necessary information you need to be able to make an informed decision. If it doesn't, more than happy to take any questions unless you want to add anything further.
Good. Okay, questions. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I'm not sure if this is a legal question or not. We already have a JMA with the Tūwhare Māori Trust Board, which I was really lucky to be at the official signing of, not in a council role, but I don't recall us ever opting out or there being an issue. I understand we need to re-establish a committee, I get that, but we talk about in this about completing a JMA, but to me there is already a JMA. So I'm just trying to figure out around the second half of the recommendations about how that all fits. I can understand that there's been some changes because it includes Taupō waters, and so there's some changes around scope. But I just don't. Is it not an amended or a refreshed JMA as opposed to a JMA? Because and if so, if it is a different JMA, then do we not need to opt out of what has already been signed by the chief and Rick Cooper, who was the mayor at the time?
I will attempt to answer that, but thankfully have some colleagues in the room who may be able to add to that. So as I understand, the existing JMA was established under the RMA. It is quite specific in terms of dealing with resource consents and private plan changes as per the RMA on multiply owned multi-land. This JMA, however, is to be established under the Waikato River Act, separate legislation.
For waters.
And to potentially cover Taupō waters as well. There are quite distinct functions that must be included in this JMA that are not currently included in the other JMA. And this has been set out in the report as well.
So Lachlan?
Getting myself in trouble, yeah. So the first JMA, the purpose was related to significant natural areas and how that might impact on Māori landowners. So the JMA was put in place to make it easier for Māori landowners, if they needed to get a consent with SNAs on their property, to do that in I'll go faster track sort of arrangement. My understanding is it's only been used once for a bridge over in Whareroa or some over that way direction. But that was its purpose. This is quite different to this one, from my perspective.
Councillor Shepherd?
It's confused me a bit. I didn't have any of the back history for this as a first term councillor, so I've been a little unsure about all of this. But so is it then a whole new JMA agreement we are looking to complete here, or are we going to take the existing JMA and apply a variation to it?
There's yet to be a discussion with the parties in terms of how or where the existing JMA will sit. But if I could just be clear that this JMA is as per the River Act, and there are some specific things and provisions that we need to include in this new JMA that is quite distinctively different to the existing JMA.
Yes, I absolutely get that. I absolutely understand that. I'm just trying to understand the process that we're following. Is it a new JMA?
Yeah, it's a new JMA.
Right.
Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, so clarification on my behalf as well. The commit, I've got it from your paper here, formal negotiations came to a halt after the committee was formed in 2020. So there was a committee in 2020. There's not a committee now. There is a committee now.
What happened is we did formally establish the committee. We did not, however, re-establish it as part of the new election, as part of the new triennium alongside other committees at that time. So this is merely a transactional matter that we're seeking your approval on so that we can kickstart the formal negotiation process.
Well, I suppose to follow on from that, I mean, it seems as if an administrative slip up, but we haven't seemed to have missed the committee much. As if what would it have been achieving if we don't miss it so much that we forget about it?
Yeah, I don't think it was a matter of forgetting about it. There are some aspects that are included in the report as to why the negotiations came to a bit of a halt. But also, as the report also sets out, we are now in a position to be able to recommence those negotiations. Technical officers have been working through some matters that we are hopeful will help inform the process moving forward, and we're now ready to be able to support the joint committee once we re-establish it.
Thank you, Ned. I think it will also help us meet our statutory obligations as per the River Act.
I suppose one question in my mind was that, I mean, at the moment, the RMA, the Resource Management Act, is being reviewed, and including the removal of Te Mana to Otawai requirements. That's part of the review, and I'm just wondering if this could be an expensive compromise at the expense of ratepayers. Forming the committee in the first place, it's a question in my mind. I don't know if you can answer that.
But basically, this is a legal requirement to form the committee. Is that correct? Yep. Yep. And it's under the River Act. Correct. So it's separate to the RMA, Councillor Campbell.
And the final JMA will come back to us?
Correct.
Yeah.
It'll come back to both the Trust Board and Council for final approval. And we do endeavour to keep you updated throughout the process as well in terms of key terms that we managed to get through to ensure that you're happy with the direction of travel.
Councillor Rankin?
I didn't have any issue with the refreshing. I didn't realise it was a whole new agreement, and that worries me a little bit, but I didn't have any problem with refreshing it or anything other than the additional things that you want to add in there, and they're quite wide ranging, and we've not heard a thing about it before now, and I just need to say I feel uncomfortable with that, and I won't be voting for that.
If I could just be super clear, this is a JMA that we are required to establish under statute as per the River Act.
With those additional points, I'm not talking about the JMA and the things that you've asked for additional things to be added in there. So is that part of the new legislation that they have to be included?
No, as the report sets out, that will be a matter of negotiation. The precise details of those matters are not yet known. These recommendations for you to resolve today are to enable a discussion between the parties to be able to understand the benefits associated with some of these things that have been sought, but also the implications if there are any.
I think section 54 does allow for those additional matters to be considered. I think some of them, I think we're already doing it as, I guess, our BAU in terms of how we engage and interact with our iwi partners. So just an example, one of the things they've asked to consider is around strengthening of relationships. We've committed to that as an organisation. We're doing that at an operational level. There's aspects of it being done at a governance level that I might add as well. So essentially for some of these things, it will be formalising what we're currently doing at the moment.
Lachlan?
Yeah, keep myself safe. I mean, my reading is that we're improving those in principle. So I think there is, if you do approve things in principle and then you don't agree, then that can sometimes be a little bit untidy. But in terms of our legal position, if we've said later that we haven't come to agreement, then I'm assuming we don't have to do any of them. I'm not particularly worried about legal. I think it's just more about relationship Yes.
Councillor Libby.
Yeah, just to add a bit of context, the Karoa River Tarot and Okawa have also had the bin of the main provisions in our regional. So it's been as David has said, it's very much a more formalising of how we do things anyway. But it allows the direction for a conversation to take place in that negotiation. Exactly what's so.
I guess if I could just quickly add, the benefit in supporting that recommendation in principle today is that it will negate the need for the joint committee to potentially come up with the same recommendation and then us having to come back to you to seek the same recommendation that we're seeking today.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, just dwelling on the third recommendation as well that Corn just outlined and Danny has as well. I think obviously without trying to sound completely naive, it does say it may include, and obviously recently on our Tarot committee, we're looking at obviously working with Taupō where it's looking more like co-designing being at the start there. So you would like to think that I don't like the word negotiating either, but I mean, obviously we'll be on the same page and trying to deliver the same outcome for the whole community. So in that sense, I'm comfortable, but I do appreciate the conversation around that number 3 as well, the recommendation. And just actually on the other page, it's a bit of just for accuracy, it hasn't got number 2 hasn't got Karen's name in there, and number 2 it's just only got the 3 names on the second page under the background. It's left Karen's name out.
Yeah.
So it's in the recommendation though. It's okay though. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Councillor Park and then Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I have great value in our relationship with Ngāti Tūwharetoa, and I always have. And I have worked with the Tūwharetoa Māori Trust Board on the Taupo Management Board, so I feel like I have used relationships there. However, you talk about keeping relationships safe. I don't feel comfortable that we would be doing that by this being given to council without full knowledge. I was aware that it would be a refresh, whereas it's not. This is a completely different JMA. And I would have thought it would be for relationships like that you'd have a governance to governance hui, where this would be the topic of conversation. I mean, this is just not a transactional committee. This is about Māori, the Māori view as well. And I just don't in all consciousness feel like we would strengthen relationships if we just put a subcommittee into looking at this. And I seriously don't know how I feel about it. I don't think I've had enough time, and I've been around this table for a while, so I'm a bit lost.
If I could attempt to respond, as I see it, the purpose of this paper and the recommendations that we're seeking today is to mobilise and empower exactly that, the establishment of a joint committee made up of governance from Tūwharetoa Māori Trust Board and the council to discuss matters for potential inclusion in the JMA. I don't believe, and Nick, please come and help if you can, that extending the scope of the existing JMA was ever in the remit of this conversation. Not sure how that came about.
Also, like, yes, I know that we've got legal obligations as well, but we have been fulfilling them for the last couple of years, so I don't see why a couple of months is going to change things.
Okay, Nick, any further commentary from you?
I guess I would just sum up by saying that there's a piece of legislation that requires you to do this. So there's no question about having to have a joint management agreement. What this joint management agreement covers is totally different to what is covered in the other joint management agreement. I think certainly starting off your negotiation process on this one under the River Act, you're probably best thinking about that other joint management agreement just sitting off to the side. It's very particular talking about the appointment of commissioners in relation to hearings under the Resource Management Act. there's the potential that as your negotiations go on, you might want to think about, from an efficiency perspective, bringing those two together, but certainly I don't think you have to start there by any stretch. The establishment of the committee is exactly the same process that we went through with Raukawa and with Te Arawa River Iwi Trust when we established those joint management agreements. So this is a very consistent practice in terms of how you approach this. In terms of the matters around Section 54 and additional things, that's always up to council to make those decisions about whether you wish to include those. I guess what I would do is I'd point to those two existing JMAs where you've established co-governance committees, which are not required by the legislation, but you chose to do that through those two joint management agreements. What I'd also do is point to the mana whakahonu agreement that you have with Turangi-Tongariro, where it went through a similar exercise of talking about what additional things could we codify in terms of the relationship and I guess the standard practice that council already had in place. My take of the resolutions or the recommendations that have been put in front of you is very much creating a starting point for those conversations rather than an input. You will have multiple off-ramp opportunities as you progress through these negotiation processes. What you might want to do is think about how often and the depth of the connection that you have between the work that the committee's doing and you as a council. Now, if I go back to the Raukawa JMA, that was kind of handed to the committee, they did all the work, and then it was brought up to council who stamped it and said, yep, we'll go with that. You may feel as you progress through this JMA that you want to have more regular reporting. You want to stay in contact more with how those negotiations are going. You can absolutely do that, and that's a direction that you could give to the committee. But you do have to create that committee, and they do have to negotiate this JMA.
Councillor Taylor and then Councillor Campbell. Yeah.
You just either recommendation 3, but I would point out the wording is pretty clear to me. It says approved in principle, and it may be included, and negotiation scope. So those are not must, shall, black and white. This is lots of, I dare use the word wriggle room. But I note in section 54, although that facilitates entry into the other matters, and to use Nick's words, it also provides lots of off ramps. So at any point you're uncomfortable, we are uncomfortable, there's an opportunity to move aside. So I actually have some comfort in that. I don't share everyone's concerns. I hear your concerns, but I don't share them, and I'm comfortable with the recommendations.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about legislation. I'm still not convinced that the consequences of breaching legislation more than a slap on the wrist. And I haven't heard at all here about the benefit to the ratepayer of the district about having this JMA. I'm not saying it wouldn't be a good thing, but I'm not convinced it's a necessary thing for it. We've done without it for this long. And of course, going down this track of setting up a JMA in the first place, yeah, certainly I have hesitations about those extra, the add-ons, I call them, and the details not yet decided. But whatever you kick this sort of thing off, the process will involve costly staff time, probably lawyers. I get the inferred risk seems to be a relationship between TDC and Te Papamārearea Māori Trust Board. And I suppose in my eyes, and many people call me one-eyed, but I'm somewhat affected. The relationship is somewhat dubious anyway. I'm coloured by the fact that the 5 Mile Bay occupation and prevention of public access to public reserves as a breach of Treaty of Waitangi as it is a failure, and as is the failure to set up a reserve management plan by March of this year. So trust is an issue with me.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Wish. I was just backing up Councillor Taylor's commentary about point number 3, and also along with as aside with Anne, like Anna, I've actually been on a few these JMAs and committees as well in the last few years as well, so I find them very beneficial to outcomes. And also we have to give effect to Taupo-Kaingaroa as well, the document we signed into as well with Regional Council and Tūwharetai. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Yeah, I just have to agree with Councillor Williamson and Councillor Taylor. I was looking through the recommendations made under section 54, everything that's bullet pointed, I believe we already do in some capacity here at the Taupō District Council. So I think none of them scare me, and I think there's enough within the wording as well that allows us, much like Councillor Taylor said, some off ramps to have conversations to ensure that we as council are comfortable with the steps that being made moving forward. So I'm much like Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Councillor Westerman.
And I agree. I think we've got a committee that has had dealings with the councillors that have been nominated there. They understand the process and they bring a lot of not historic information, but detail to the table that will make this road reasonably easily travelled. So it has my support.
Councillor Greenslade.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is just a technical question, probably for you, Nick. Have the JMAs with Rokawa and Te Aroa got the section 3 in them as well?
All matters.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They do. Now,
yes,
you might have some different matters that you put into this JMA, but certainly both of those existing ones have matters that go beyond the existing legislative minimums.
thank you.
Councillor Rankin.
I have no problem with these things being discussed as BAU, no problem at all. But I do believe if we do this and then we withdraw our support for any of those things later on, it is going to damage the relationship. And it feels like another mana whakahono by stealth. And I don't think that that's right. So I'm sorry, I just can't agree with it.
Right. Yeah. Any other further discussion? Okay, there's a recommendation there.
So can I just make make a point? This is the way council operates. We've got a whole pile of councillors sitting around the table, a number of us with different thoughts. So just to Councillor Campbell's previous discussion points, we do work very openly. Everyone has an opportunity. We've had some matters brought forward as options from the staff. We've discussed them, and this is the way we work. There is nothing wrong with the way that Taupō District Council sit around our table, Councillor Campbell.
All right. Recommendation there. Do I have a mover, please?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Are we going to go through them 1, 2, 3, 4, or is it going to be connected?
Well, it's going to move on block because there's going to be any change at all. So there is some dissent regarding number
So
3.
Can I suggest that you go through them one by one? That way you have certainty around who's agreeing on individual items.
I have to say, I feel completely out of my depth on this. I read this agenda. It's the first time I'd read about this JMA, and then I thought we were re-establishing an existing committee. I thought it was the existing JMA. I thought it was all these things, and it's turned out to be none of those things. And I do recognise that there's a legal requirement for the JMA. No problem with that. I recognise there's some legal requirements about what's included. No problem with that. And I see that there is scope for further negotiation around other topics. Are we being a bit too specific about that? Are we somewhat defining the scope of negotiation by including just those bullet points? Or could we establish that it will, there'll be some additional matters to be negotiated in due course? That might allay some concerns.
They've been requested.
I know they've been requested. I'm just suggesting that from our perspective, narrowing the scope to that I'm just asking the question if there's a way to reword that might allay some of the concerns, that's all.
So if I may, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So those matters are section 54 from the Act. So that's why they've been listed. That's not like the team have thought about what may be the basis of the scope of the negotiation for the additional matters. They've pulled across those matters from the Act.
So I know that it's section 54, not you may include,
Yeah.
you can consider.
Yeah.
So there'll be lots of things that can be included in that bullet point list.
Or
Is what I'm asking.
or there might be less.
Or maybe less, yeah, because I take Christine's point that if we agree in principle and then want to change it, I can't say that we would necessarily want to change anything there, but I'm just wondering if we're defining the scope a little bit too much. That's my question.
Worship, yeah, I think just with Rachel's point, it's quite a valid point, but I think in the actual scope of activity actually clarifies that make any recommendations to council and TMD and Tū Whātau just they come back to full council, make recommendations to council anyway. So I'm sure that will be in this the terms of reference anyway. Is that right, Danny?
I think you have the question answered. So I mean, I think Councillor Shepherd's suggesting we might just reread number 3, removes in principle additional matters to be included under and just not have the scope of what was put in the request. Is a suggestion, amendment that would.
So should we go through them one by one then?
Yeah.
Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, well, just to mention on Councillor Westerman's comment about, if I talk about practicable options, if I may, option 2 is do not re-establish the committee. I mean, the disadvantages are given. An expansion on that as to the actual consequences to the average, to the district and the ratepayer, apart from those 2 things, would have been a fuller explanation, for example. I'm just pointing out, because it doesn't seem too extraordinarily terrible if we just don't do it.
So I think that's what the word practicable means. So we're not, any crazy option out of the middle of nowhere. Practicable is things like, you need to have options that are lawful, for example. Just a comment. I mean, I was on the original JMA committee as the Tū Whātua Māori Trust Board rep. We never met. And that was partly because the council was busy, COVID hit. And so I would argue that we have mutually, not panicked, it's not to say it's not important, but we're not panicked. But there is a legal requirement and there are some sort of timeframes, I think, which is why they've got that 30th of June 2025. So I think the suggestion from our staff is we can't really put it off anymore. But let's be clear. So the committee is about working out what this JMA might look like, and then it comes to the full council.
So, Councillor Taylor.
Just one really quick point here. I have some concerns simplifying point 3, because in that case, in the interests of openness and transparency, you're then voting on matters you have no idea what they'll end up being. Whereas at the moment, we have a list of things that we know that we are putting on the table. But if you could just leave it generic, so whatever comes, then that's what it would be. And that's not open and transparent. Whereas at the moment, whether you agree or disagree with the points that are there, at least you know what you're signing up to negotiate.
Okay, are we happy with moving each recommendation here? So, number 1, who's happy to move that? Councillor Westerman, second by Councillor Greenplate. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Number 2, points Councillor Fletcher, Leonard and Truman as members, considering that Councillor Truman and Williamson as the alternate. Yeah, as John as the alternate. Have a mover, please. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Rankin, second by Councillor Taylor. 3. Do we want an amendment here?
We're going to do a vote on.
We're going to do an amendment.
Okay, so number 3. Have a mover.
Number 2.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Abstain.
Oh, sorry. All those in favour, number 2, please. Aye.
I've stayed.
Carried. Number 3, over mover, please.
I'll move it. We're overthinking it.
Moved by Councillor Westerman, Councillor Williamson, sorry. Seconded by Councillor Westerman. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Hands up, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I presume John. Motion is carried.
Can you please record my vote against?
Those against, are you not abstaining? You're against?
Against.
Against. Councillor Shepherd, Greenslade, Rankin, and what's his name? Gamble. Okay, the motion is carried and passed. And number 4 agrees to complete the JMA by 30th of June 2025. Have a move, please. Thank you, Councillor.
Just a quick question. Are there any implications if for some reason beyond our control, we can't make that date? Are there any repercussions of that?
Yeah, exactly.
We'd come back and report to you in terms of progress, just like other projects we were at.
Okay, so we're not bound by that. Let's just say we want to go back and well, that's my concern is like, let's say we do want to negotiate or flesh things out a little bit and we get beyond that date, are we going to be bound to this?
Well, regular reporting, hopefully. We'll
Gotta have a date.
Okay. Was it?
And
Karen,
it's
you
achievable, I
keep-
assume.
Sorry,
We've got a project
did I have
plan that indicates.
Number 4, do I have a mover? No, a move for number 4, please. Here's Councillor Greenslade, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against?
So,
No one against, but 1 abstention. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, David. 5.5, gambling report. Back to council, Mr. Andrew Wilson.
Andrew.
Good afternoon, Andrew.
I'll take the item as read. However, I'll just give you a quick reminder of how we got here. So back in 2023, we reviewed the Class 4 gambling policy. And at that time, not much had changed since the previous review of the policy. Nothing had changed in terms of the number of machines, the number of venues. It was a very much a static environment. So the recommendation at that time was to roll over the existing policy, given that you'd done quite an extensive review of policy with a social impact statement and everything, social impact assessment and everything associated with that in 2020, which outlined those harms that gambling does in the community, outlined the risk of gambling in the Taupō District. But you asked us when we agreed of that rollover of that policy, you asked us to report back to you later on and let you know basically what's happening with Class 4 gambling. And if you had allowed you to have some more time to think about the matter, this update provides you the information of what's been happening in that space. And then if you wish to make any changes to the policy or anything like that, we can discuss how that would happen if you so wish. However, this report's not making any recommendations to that effect. It's merely an informational piece for you to receive an update on what's happening or what's not. Happy to take any questions or have any clarifying points about the data or the matters included inside of the report.
Questions? Councillor Lachlan? Sorry. Oh, what was that, Danny? Sorry. All right, cool. Yeah, Councillor Greenslade.
Thank you very much on this, Andrew. I am sort of involved in this on one of the committees that I'm on. They're iniquitous things, ghastly, horrible, awful things. But the truth of it is that we do need to keep them in our community, because if we remove them or lessen them, people will go online and gamble online. And at present, at least the funds that they bring in do actually provide services in our district. And they do actually, in lots of ways, return back to those people who've actually put the money in the first place in form of social support. So ghastly, awful, terrible things that they are, we are sort of stuck with them. So just a comment really. I know that in the committee I'm involved in, we are concerned that people are, especially in the winter time, they don't come out, they stay at home and they gamble online. So we do need to keep the horrible things away.
You happy to second? Are you happy to second?
Oh, through the chair.
Yes,
So the chair, I've got a
I'm happy
quick-
to second it because they're
Because they're
awful
all-
and we keep them, yeah.
Cool, councillor Campbell.
Yeah, no, I just wonder, I take councillor Greenslade's assumptions. I mean, it seems, well, I'm just interested, if, this council was, more, a bit in, rather than just make some assumptions like that, but actually, well, sorry, I'm just, look, it is a bit of a field. I'm aware of just going on face value assumptions can be misleading. My comment, I suppose, is I gather in the Turangi area in particular, it is a big issue. It's a problem. Gambling is considered a problem down that way.
And so I don't think you should single out one of the districts. I think that's completely discriminatory statement.
Oh, no. I'll back up that information. I have a relative who actually has done.
Oh, good lord.
Who is a local and is actually involved. That's one of his specialty subjects, and he specifically mentioned to me. I don't want to black label. I'm just saying. I'm questioning. Okay, the assumption that they'll just all go online if we take them away. I appreciate seems to be a reasonable argument that they add money to the district, but I'm not 100% convinced that we shouldn't be aiming to do away with them altogether. That's what I'm trying to get.
No, we're not. Councillor Williamson. Councillor Williamson. What's the jackpot up to? No. Councillor Williamson.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I actually chaired that committee, but it must be 2020. Yeah, thanks, Andrew. It's a very comprehensive report. It's actually interesting and supporting what Sandra was saying. Like at that time, we had some robust consultation process and some very passionate people in the community opposing him, social harm, and also a lot of passionate people supporting it because they perceive some of the economic benefits to the community. But it is interesting. We did cap it at that stage. Did, from memory, Andrew, allowing for one more potential venue to come in and take up the excess. But obviously, I see from your report, there's been no change in the current number of Class 4 gambling venues, which is interesting. So, although having said that, we've been through a few years of pretty tough time with COVID, etc. But yes, that's interesting. Yeah, so actually, so just look forward to where we go forward from here.
Cool. Thank you, John. Councillor Williamson. Councillor, back to Councillor Lachlan. You've moved it.
Yes, I'm quite clear. We're just receiving some statistics and updates, and still happy to move that.
Well, to the chair, can I another question there? Just yeah, well, just a question now. Okay, I understand what sinking lid policy means. As they're withdrawn, they don't get replaced. I get that, and by the year 2235, there'll be zero, I guess, something like that. But is that the most where? So that sounds like a desire to be rid of them. If you're even having a policy like that, is that the assumption here?
Through the chair, as outlined in the report, if your maximal goal was to minimise the social harm of those machines, you would go with a formalised sinking lid. That was identified in the 2020 social impact assessment, that would be the best way to minimise the harm of gambling. If that was your only objective, was to minimise harm, and there was no other objectives. However, that's not to say that there would not be harm from other forms of gambling, such as online gambling and those other matters. But those are outside of our control. We don't have the legislative authority to manage online gambling. So we would only be able to have an impact on the gambling matters that are within our control, which is Class 4 gambling premises and machines locally. To your point around Turangi being raised, yes, there is some effect on Turangi in regards to gambling, and the number of machines per capita, if you just take out Turangi, is higher than in Taupō, and gets close to a threshold which would be considered a high level of risk. However, it's still not at that 75 machines per 10,000 residents rate, which is determined to be of high risk by the Ministry of Health.
Thank you, Andrew. As always, you've got the information perfectly delivered. Thank you very much. It's been moved by Councillor Lachlan, seconded by Councillor Greenslade. received the information, Greg. And thank you very much for that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. Right, performance report, Purnell, 5.6.
So me to start with, just
Oh,
intro the
sorry, yeah.
report.
Sorry,
So,
thank you.
So
Madam CEO.
obviously we'll do the report in several parts. The first part is for myself and the exec, if there's any questions, and then Purnell will give us an awesome update, projects.
Very good.
And that no questions is actually Purnell anyway.
No questions of the CEO? No? Purnell, good afternoon. Kia ora.
Going to this spring weather.
Box of fluffies.
So we're reporting today on the portfolio update. There's 20 projects. There's been a couple, Northern Access Investigation and Wairakei Roundabout, which have obviously been wrapped up. So we're not reporting on them.
Hit last night. Have you seen it? Yeah. Not last night, the night before, the big fender around. Sorry, Tony, I haven't understand. It's got taken out. What are those big metal things?
Barriers.
Barriers. Got taken out last night. Sorry, the night before last. Sorry about that.
No, you could clean up this.
Sorry, Purnell.
No, that's fine. It continues to be a wonderful study into the psyche of the human race. That roundabout.
He was going to do a PhD.
So one of the new ones is the airport apron, which is obviously part 3 of the triptych associated with the airport project. It's an extension of the parking lot for planes. Obviously there's 2 gates there at the minute. Things are going well for that, and we're due to complete the construction by the end of this year, due for the final payment from MB. That's our final PGF project, done and dusted in January of next year.
Sad. No more PGF money. Apron is just the surface, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, essentially where you see those little wee Cessnas parked up. And I was out there today with Wayne when we saw one of the large, and I don't know the technical term for it, but a very large private jet that flies up from Christchurch quite regularly. And we watched as the wingspan went over the edge of the current runway. Essentially the connector between the runway and the parking lot. So we realised that whilst works are on the apron, we will have to stop work when that particular plane, which is coming quite regularly, drops on by.
Oh, gee, that
is
okay.
Beautiful.
Is it? Okay.
$2 million.
Very good.
Please swim down.
I'm sure that's what Wayne was saying.
Yeah.
So other changes in the report, we've got local waters done well. Of course, you'll understand the risk rating for that around time has escalated slightly as we begin to understand the massive amount of work ahead of us to complete the heads of agreement with the other Waikato councils. And good news, the Whangamata Road Improvements Project is due to finalise the contract this week, aiming to complete sign-off by early next week, construction beginning in October. There's a small increase in risk for View Road. We're looking to obviously wrap that up, but we just need to integrate the final SCADA telemetry so all of the reporting from the new pivots goes through. But there's been some great news on that in the last week or so, just in regards to the receiving of compliance data. So hopefully we'll see that risk reduction go down pretty quickly. I guess the only other thing to comment is the life budget numbers on this report are still financial year end. So we're just working with finance at the moment to provide those. So next month you'll have an update on each of the individual projects. But good news, working with Jeanette and Aaron over the last couple of days and the finance team, and we've spent around 13 million of capital this financial year. So that is good news in terms of the continuity of our larger drinking water standards projects in particular. And you'll see some good changes going on with Southern Trunk Main. Any questions?
Thanks, Purnell. Questions? Councillor Campbell.
You mentioned the Waikato Water Done Well agreement, a lot of work required. I'm a bit wary of that because, yeah, in doing that would be a lot of work and we're not committed to it. we're not saying we're committed to it. Perhaps before a heck of a lot of work goes into it, perhaps we should be being reported to updating, or we could waste a lot of time for nothing.
Through the chair, I will defer to Tony, but it is a combination of the water services plan, which is required by legislation, and some work on the heads of agreement, which we've previously committed to through a council meeting.
Oh, we're getting mixed up.
Yeah, through the chair. I mean, there are two separate streams there, but we're kind of labelling all under local water done well. We've got the water service delivery plan, as Pernille indicated, which we have to do, and we're making some good progress in there. And obviously, we're still keeping elected members, councillors informed around the table where we are with the heads of agreement. I think I mentioned that, but Julie's got a meeting on Friday this week, looking at what the heads of agreement might look like. And of course, as we previously indicated, we will be bringing that back October/November, perhaps. Won't be signing anything, obviously, until you are fully informed.
Well, Tony, you heard Christine's warning from what was her name? Let's forget her name.
Louise
Upston about having anything to do with Waikato. That's what I heard, unless I'm hearing a warning, a firm warning. That's what I heard.
Made it to them yet.
Yeah, I mean,
Danny.
obviously we're talking about our project delivery update, so taking forward there's the government has a view and opinion, and we're just working with some of those councils.
Any other questions for now? Councillor Greenslade?
I'm not sure that this is Pernille's department, but I think it probably is. Just the project quantum, because all the rates information, everything is offline at present. And we just need to make sure that we've got all that stuff back online when people actually get their rates, don't we? And presumably that's all underway.
Through the chair, the good news is that Libby is here as to speak as sponsor of Project Quantum. So that very topic.
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. That's really important. So one of the main features of phase 3 was our ability to strike rate. And we've talked a little bit around some delays to that project, making sure that our people are not doing too many hours to get it there. But one of the reasons that we've pushed on with it is because we have to be able to strike rates. So everything now is, we're out of our blackout period. We've switched over to the new system, and we are just making some tweaks and fixing some things that come through as you'd expect, but we will be able to strike rates. We've just got that. We've got a new system that customers will see when they're paying. Otherwise, we're have to strike those rates.
Just through the chair, we actually to just give Councillor Greenslade some comfort. We had quite the risk and assurance agenda last week, of which Project Quantum was discussed at some length, and further information was asked for. But please rest assured that the Audit and Risk Committee, with our independent chair, went through it thoroughly.
Oh, any other questions I'll put out? No, sounds like we're well underway with the capital projects. It's great. So thank you for now. Very good. No other questions from the performance report?
I did have that.
Yeah, Councillor Greenslade.
There's a bit of left field. Gotta find it because I made a note when I was reading. We're talking about I can't find it, so it'll be off the top of my head. We're talking about traffic management and Christmas and all the rest of it on one hand, and on the other hand, we're talking about State Highway 1 being closed in January. I sort of think the two departments are not talking to each other. I think the traffic management and Christmas and all of that is going to be quite different this year, and I think we're going to have to be ready to be aware of what happens, because we're closing State Highway 1 in January, and people are going to be using the other road to get to and from. Your traffic's going to be completely different to what it's ever been.
Oh.
UTA.
State Highway.
Better or worse?
Nobody knows.
Be better.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly we're very aware of some of the delays and extra traffic and how long the actual project is going to be taking over. The team are working alongside NZTA, and we're already getting some higher volumes than normal, as I touched on this morning, and we'll be following up with NZTA. It is they are using some obviously our roads. So we are working with them around condition and impact on those, but certainly are very aware of the impact.
Yes.
Yes. But can I ask though, I mean, maybe it's apparent, well, now-ish, intersections might be getting congested out on the western route. Delays. Is that a thing you've heard of, or?
For the chair, I'm not aware of that at the moment.
2 intersections, I would think, really. Puepi Road and Maratiri there, then down bottom of Western Bay.
And I also think, Your Worship, that with the economic crisis like it is, I think people probably be holidaying closer to home too. And Taupō is closer to home for most people in the North Island. And I think you'll be finding that, Airbnb, batch care and all those sorts of things will be absolutely chocker. Meanwhile, we've got State Highway growing closed. So I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge for our people.
Very good. Oh, cool. Yeah. Have a further discussion? No, nothing to sum up, Madam CEO? No, all good. Moved by Councillor Park, seconded by Councillor Fletcher. That the performance report be accepted. Please, what have we got now? All those in favour, thank you. Say aye. Those against, carried. Right, 5.7. Proposed amendment to the Taupō East Rural Committee Community Grant Distribution Committee. Here we have this afternoon, Karen. Thank you, Karen.
Kia ora koutou. So this is basically just following on from your deliberations over LTP, and is just asking that you amend the terms of reference for the Taupō East Rural Community Grant Distribution Committee to include 2 community members, and that will then line up with the other committees that distribute grants. Do you have any questions?
Perfect, Karen. Thank you. Right, questions. Councillor Park.
Sharon, will it be the actual committee, or will it be council appointing those community members like we do the other groups?
So you mean the process to appoint the 2 extra committee?
When we receive the applications, is it the full council who decide on those committee members, or is it the
That's correct, yeah. So, yeah, in the same way that when you establish your committees at the start of the triennium and we bring the appointed members, the community and Māori reps before you, or have it in the same way.
Right, thank you.
Very good.
I'll move, Your Worship.
Yes, oh, thank you, John. Moved by Councillor Williamson. So I have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Karen, next one is yours as well. 5.8. Do you want me to?
No, I'm doing it. So good.
Oh.
With regards to engagements, there have been a couple of workshops added. So Thursday, the 10th of October, there's a workshop around the Lake Terrace Maunganamu Drive roundabout and the connection to Pukinamu Road. And that's from 11:30 till 12:30 on the 10th. And then in the afternoon, there's another workshop delivered by Waikato Regional Council, and that's around simplifying public transport investment, Waikato Regional Rating Model.
Through the chair.
Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, about that Pukinamu roundabout. We did have we got that email from Jeremy, I think it was. They were expressing they would like to do their present to us at that workshop, do a little mini public forum. Is there, why can't we do that? Give them 10 minutes.
Suggest
forums for.
So it's actually, it's the council.
For the workshop where we're talking about it. I mean,
yeah, we.
I mean, it just seems to make sense to me. A few of them will be interested in it, and they'll they no doubt will.
More than a few. More than a few.
The answer.
To let them speak.
Speaking of.
Yeah, I'll let you speak.
We have public forums at the beginning of the council meeting with this particular topic. What we've just agreed this morning through the chair of that workshop is that that group will be able to submit their questions and then we will be able to answer those in that workshop for them. Obviously, it's your workshop, not a public meeting. So, but we're trying to find a balance between giving those groups the opportunity to have their questions answered, and for you, given it's your workshop, to
So they're able to come to the workshop.
Oh, absolutely. It's a public
Yeah,
workshop, but
okay.
we're also giving them the opportunity to submit questions.
Done.
Can I request, given the public interest of that workshop, firstly that it will be audio video recorded, because not all of them will be able to turn up. I think that's actually a reasonable request. There is significant interest from that street. The second one was, just a question actually. We've got a bunch of notes in here, skip through. Is that made available to them as well, those reports? They can look, do they know about that now? They can look at it now, or how do they know about it?
They're not councillors, they're public.
Chair, just to reiterate, obviously, we have a paper which we removed, and that hasn't gone out for public consultation at this stage, is my understanding. So what we'll do is we want to go for a workshop, public open workshop, where we can just explain some of those engineering and just a bit more detail for you, ask some questions. And then obviously we'll follow the normal process where you'll get the paper in advance, as well as be publicly available at the same time through our website. And we have liaised with that community group as well, made them aware of what's happening.
Just to the chair, I think it might be. I've looked at the content of that paper. I just think it might be useful. I feel it will stimulate more questions from them, and if they see it before the workshop, that would be better. That could be beneficial.
Through the chair, that's not our normal process, my understanding.
Sorry, through the chair, it's going to be a workshop is an information session for councillors. Yeah. The public are more than welcome to attend to hear the information. We have a public forum at the beginning of every council meeting. Notably, they didn't ask to turn up and talk to us today to their email. And Councillor Campbell lost his notice of motion. So why can't he just get on with the fact he didn't win his argument and let us do our job?
Well,
Councillor Taylor Park took the words right out of my mouth.
That was a question.
Okay, Sharon. So we've decided that they are going to come to the workshop.
It's an open workshop.
Open workshop.
Not to present.
Well, let's get so not to present at the workshop.
No, not if you want every time.
Well, and this is exactly the sort of thing I'm saying. There is a level of public interest. Not everyone, if you let me finish, not everyone is prepared to take.
Because you feel it's something.
This is not an exception. I think there should be exceptions, and we don't video record these workshops.
Daniel.
Clear, the actual discussions in terms of paper and stuff will happen much later. This is just a briefing for ourselves. The process where they get to engage and everything else is happening at a later point, and I'm happy with that.
Okay, so what they're asking at the moment, is it correct that they're wanting to present at the workshop? No. They're asking this. So do we have they or not?
It's Duncan asking us.
I'll ask them to ask you. How about that?
Okay.
What am I asking them again?
They haven't specifically emailed me.
Okay, no, I'll ask them. I'll get them to ask them more questions. No, I'll make a note of it now.
Point, because it is a workshop for elected members to be able to ask questions and be informed.
I will ask them.
They can come and observe that.
Exactly right. So
No, they can come to the public.
They're entitled to ask.
Well, you lost your notice of motion, so it won't happen.
No, I'm going to do it.
It's not a good idea to set people up for failure.
Yes.
Okay, can we just get this clear?
If I may.
We have a.
I'd like to hear what's going on.
If I may, our infrastructure manager, Roger Stokes, has been involved. He's been discussing this with them. The staff have it in hand. We're aware. We've agreed a way forward. We do not need. We have an agreement in terms of what was going to be happening at the workshop. It is your workshop. They are submitting questions in advance.
Okay, cool. Right.
And in the right process.
But if they want to publicly conversed with us, they'll do it through the public forum.
Well, that's another option for them if they
Yeah,
wish.
yeah, cool. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Your worship,
On a decision,
I would
you
like
think-
to bring up the fact that's completely out of order, I know, of the discussion about the chateau closing and out
No.
in public talk that has been about it. I'd quite like it if Taupō District Council, perhaps councillors and yourself were sort of involved in publicly supporting the chateau going ahead. It's a terribly important building in our district. It's a heritage, category 1 heritage building. And I just sort of feel that it's something that we should perhaps speak up a little bit more about. It's successive governments. I know it's out of order, Councillor Taylor. I know that. I
Okay.
get it. But I just want to say that it's not a political thing. It's successive governments, and we own this building. The people of New Zealand own this building. It's not owned by anybody else. It's owned by the people of New Zealand. I just like to bring it to attention of council. It's very important to the Turangi people because it provided a lot of work for us. Yeah.
Respectfully, we have a agenda item on the table. It needs to be moved, seconded, and voted on, and we've meandered all over the place.
Sorry.
Can we come back to the business at hand and then perhaps have another conversation?
To be fair, Councillor Green said before the agenda item was over, I think.
I did.
Yes, so can we go back to Karen's beautiful report? Oh, you come back here, Karen. Moved by Councillor Shepherd, seconded by Councillor Fletcher. Those dates be accepted and all that sort of carry on. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Green. So just on that subject, yeah, the matters in hand, you know, there's a petition, there's all sorts of things. I believe it lands with the Minister of Conservation, so he's well aware of the situation.
Well, I agree with the sentiment because
I have written to all the MPs involved myself.
Good on you.
On my council email. For a response from some of them. And I, for those of you who do follow me on Facebook, I've put some articles out there, and I've had a lot of people contact me privately, very upset about it. But it's a bit of a hot potato.
They need to go to central government. They are the owners of the building and get into it. All right. Did I have a mover into confidence, please? Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Seconded by Councillor Randall. Thank you very much. All those. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay.